the stuff that we consider to be like great ball movement and will go viral on, the NBA page is just like an average old head playing over there.
What's up? We are back with the Good Drill Pod. We have Bobby here. We have Ross here. And our guest today is Coleman. What's the vibes, Coleman? How are you?
Good, man. Feeling great. Excited to be on here. I always tap in with you guys, so it's good to be on here.
Most definitely. You know, Ross famously said that the Serbian national team could actually beat the T-Wolves. Kind of went crazy on the internet. And I know you visited Serbia, so Jokic is probably going to win 4 out of 5 MVPs. We've seen the Serbian national team almost beat Team USA. What did you learn about how they teach basketball over there?
Man, that's a big question to dive into, and we could have an hour-long conversation about this. And I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think the biggest thing is that like the stuff that we consider to be like great ball movement and will go viral on, the NBA page or whatever is just like an average old head playing over there. Like I kid you not, I've walked into pickup games there and I'm posting some videos from this soon. And these dudes who are 50 years old with a beer gut, probably drank 4 beers before the pickup game, are coming in and like making legit Jokic passes like all game. And I'm still trying to figure out how to reverse engineer it because I've been to, practices and training, whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of it is just the fact that they see different things growing up. Like we see, you know, we all grew up watching, whether it's AI, Steph, John Moran, at this generation, like whoever it is, like we grew up really emphasizing and seeing like the more individual side of things, which is what makes us special as American, basketball players. But they grew up watching EuroLeague and watching, the Jokic's of the world, but also, all the EuroLeague players who have to play with a super high IQ. So that's what I mean. That's what I've discovered so far. I think there's a lot to be uncovered there, and then the mix between like the American individual skill and then like the Serbian and European, but more so Eastern European, like ball movement and IQ in general is where basketball is going, and that's where it can get really fun.
You know, when I first went overseas, it was like basketball culture shock, and I realized how much in the States we treat basketball like an individual sport.
Yes, yes, 100%, bro. Like, I mean, most of what probably all of us played growing up is one on one, and again, that's what makes American players special, and that's what makes American guards, or like every
100%.
international team has an American guard who creates advantages for the team, who can catch a grenade at the end of the shot clock and put the ball in the basket. But in terms of the pieces around that, there are only so many guards or players who can do that and be that special. And being able to see basketball as a collective sport as well from a young age is definitely something that, is can be culture shock for the first time seeing it.
How much of a soccer influence do you feel like there is on European basketball? Because I remember when I first went overseas, somebody would get a little hurt. And we see this with Luka a little bit. They'd start rolling on the floor. Like, I thought somebody had a career-ending injury almost every other play.
Yes.
Not only that, but on top of that, how much does the way you grow up outside of basketball influence how you play on the court?
Great questions. I think number one, the soccer influence is huge. Both culturally and tactically. Culturally, like, yeah, to your point, there's a lot of flailing on the ground sometimes,
Right,
which
right.
is the clear soccer influence. But also, I think like the environment at games, like the chants, the diehard fans, stuff like that, can stem from a lot of the soccer clubs, and then kind of the approach to the game as well. And then tactically, like, I mean, most of the guys who we have come over from the States, or sorry, from outside the States, from Europe, and play during the summer in Miami, some of them will say that they never watch basketball. They only watch soccer, and like they just play FIFA all day, and they see passes that like are insane that like I wouldn't have seen a couple years ago, that none of our players see. And of course, they're exaggerating a little bit. Of course, they watch basketball to a certain extent, but I think seeing some of these patterns, whether it's like through balls or crosses, are kind of parallel to like skip passes or Soccer's played a lot in like little three-man games, like triangles, pretty similar to like how you see basketball played a lot of the time within like these three-man actions. So I think tactically there's a big parallel there. Um, and then in terms of, outside influences, I think the mindset is the biggest thing. The reason why, part of the reason why it's seen as more of an individualistic thing in America and a collectivist thing in Europe and other places is because that's how you grow up, right? Like America is a very individualistic society. Everyone's pushed to be an entrepreneur, to do your own thing, to sometimes say screw everybody else. Whereas in Europe, you're kind of seen as like an outcast if you do that. Um, Actually, there's a quote that I've heard a couple times in different forms. It's like in America, if you say that you don't want to be the most successful guy, people look at you weird. In Europe, uh, if you say that you do want to be the most successful guy, people look at you weird. So it's like fitting in versus standing out. And again, that helps in different ways. And I'm trying to identify kind of how to mix both of those together in a team environment or
Yeah.
within an individual player to have that drive to be the fucking best, but also to be willing to play within a team environment and win and compete for the collective.
Yeah, personally, I always aim to be the best, but there probably is
Yeah.
pros and cons to both sides, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I guess what I'm starting to learn is like everyone, especially in Serbia, where it's like, it's hard to explain the mindset, but everyone, from what I've seen at least, is like they want to be the best, but they want to be the best because they want their collective to be the best. Like they want to bring their people along with them.
100%.
Versus here,
Yeah.
we're like, bro, if I can be the best, like if you're not following with me, I don't
It's
care.
almost a fight within your own team. Especially
Yeah, no,
especially growing
100%.
especially growing up in New York. Like,
And yeah, I mean, I'm originally from DC, so it's a similar thing, and especially now with like, I mean, most of our guys end up going to JUCOs, going to smaller schools, just because of how college
mm,
basketball works now. Like, not many guys are going straight from high school uh, to like Division ones or even like four-year schools. So when you're there, that like you have to have that certain mindset. And I have some international players who go to those schools, and it's talk about culture shock. Like you're going to a JUCO where you have to get yours to get to that next school, and they're like, "Yo, we just want to win." Like, but it's like at some point, especially here and with the way college basketball is working, and then even high school now, you kind of got to look out for yourself. So it's kind of a tough dynamic in a lot of ways now.
I love how you bake in creativity to what you do. My question to you is, what do you feel most players, basketball trainers have wrong about developing skill?
I think they limit the view of what skill is, right? And you guys at Good Drill do a lot of incredible stuff. So I got to give you guys props for that. That is, a lot of it pertains to general skill, and that's one of those I guess components of skill that I think a lot of people see as like. I mean, we could obviously again have an hour long conversation about this, but people would call that clown training, whatever you want to call it. Whereas in my opinion, building general skill can be transferable to across the board to a ton of different specific skills. So whether it's general skill, whether it's IQ, I think we separate IQ and skill too much. Like we say, oh, he's really skilled, but he doesn't have IQ. Or like, yeah, like they play really good basketball, they have great IQ, but just not very skilled. And I think because of that, we kind of lower IQ on the totem pole. Not even just IQ, but decision making, like being able to make reads in the right read or a solid read over and over and over again. And I think those two should be paired, whether that's like split second decisions in a one on one, obviously reacting to your defender, or the IQ that's a little bit slower thinking, like playing within a team. I think all of that should be baked into what we consider to be skill, as well as like movement skill, which kind of goes in with general skill, like being able to just like you guys just mentioned, being able to move well, uh, become a good mover is a very important component of skill. But again, that's something people don't see because it doesn't include the ball for the most part. It's just like, oh, skill is just ball skill. So I think the biggest thing that as a field or whatever you want to call it, industry, who cares, that I think we do wrong, may not do enough is like really expand the vision of what skill really means and
Ross
train that.
always talks about movement over moves.
Yeah.
That's Bobby's term.
Is that your term, Bobby?
Yes.
Well, it's right here on the wall. Bobby, tell us more then, Bobby.
It was a good. No, go
No,
to
no,
Ross.
you. No, you.
No, you said
No,
you talked to Ross.
yeah.
Talk to Ross.
Yeah, you already lose. You're stuck with me.
I always win. Go.
Yeah.
Wait, no, before the movement over moves, though.
Before moving over moves, he's going to talk about something Ross created. I know this guy so well.
No. You were talking about the not separating skill and IQ. I think there's a lot of people, like, they'll compartmentalize everything. So it's like this, you need this aspect, this aspect, this aspect. And I thought what you were going to ask me was, you have a definition of skill, and how do you define skill? And I think that defining skill as what is your ability to, back to you, what you're saying, win? What is your ability to achieve what you're trying to achieve, regardless of how you do it, is a safer definition, at least. I don't know if it's a true definition, but it's safer, because then what it doesn't allow for it doesn't allow for noise to come in of like, okay, now let's start worrying about things that don't matter versus things that do matter. If you define skill as your competence in achieving a goal consistently, then you're probably in a safe boat. And a lot of people wouldn't consider athleticism as a skill. They won't consider it. But it's like, I mean, if you're athletic, you can go achieve more things, and you have a bigger capability to achieve more things. It's a little safer. And then the other point you made, which back to that same thing, I just heard JJ Redick talk about it. I don't know, you may have heard, I didn't know who he was talking about, but they said, okay, this guy is struggling in a just a side ball screen situation. And the thing that they did to get him better at it, which for some reason he said was effective, was they watched like 2 hours of film on like the best guys that do it. And then they went on the court and they ran live ball screen situations over and over again, where we're in a world where people would say, okay, either try to give you an answer about the IQ and say, you should go do this, when it's not like that. It's something you have to build and develop, like you're saying. It's something that you have to pair with other things. It's go do a reverse. Oh, you should have done a reverse layup here. That you can't teach. You can't say that. It's something that's going to happen. Perception, action.
100%.
But how people train it is they say, okay, I'm going to either tell you how to do it, or I'm going to break it down in such a way that you're going to start looking at things that don't matter. But if you just go top down and then just go super hard with the live stuff, you're probably in a safer boat as far as getting to where you want to go than a lot of other things. But it's not to say that other things can't help. Like strength training is good. I think strength training is good. I think athleticism is good. There's nobody else around. It could be you by yourself. I think doing skill work is good. Safest thing to do would be, though, all right, what is the situation I'm in? What is the environment like? And then get really good in that environment. It's just safer. Yes. It's just safer. And it's not cool to say. It's not a cool thing to say. It's not a smart thing to say. You don't look smart saying that, but it's, I don't know. What are we trying to do? Like, what's the goal?
Yeah.
How do you sell that?
Sure.
Right? How do you sell, oh, you're not good at coming off ball screens. Go work on coming off ball screens in a live setting. It's a tough sell.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you package that up? We're trying.
It is.
But, they're going to go shell, right? And they're going to go, this is how you come off a screen. This is the exact way to come off a screen. Shoulder to hip, this, that. But the perfect way to come off a screen is the way that works, right?
Yes.
And there's not one way that works. There's not ever going to be one way that works. The only way to do it is to be in that situation over and over again, throw different scenarios at them, throw different defenders at them, different looks, different sized, play against different people. That is the only way. And now you're talking about this vision of the Serbians. How do they have that? What's the biggest difference that you see from the way high school Serbians are trained versus how American high schools are trained?
Well, I think it goes back to a lot of that, right? Like, number one, I would say, just to build on that, like, I think it's a very tough sell because people don't understand that the real beauty and value in that style of training are the minor adjustments that you may make in that environment. Like you said, throwing a different defender at them to adjust kind of the constraint that's on them, right? Can you do it against a faster big, a taller big, one that plays a little bit more aggressively, whatever the case may be. And then also giving them little coaching points throughout it to help them figure it out, but not to give them the answer. It's like, hey, on that last one, what did you see? Okay, boom. They were a little bit aggressive on that. What can you do in an aggressive situation? They're starting to think about it. They're starting to, not overthink it, but start to have these critical ideas and then let them go and figure it out and feel frustrated for a little bit versus us feeling like the savior because we gave them an answer that probably won't transfer anyways. So I think a lot of it is that from what I've seen a lot in Europe is that there's still a lot of, look, everywhere in the world, there's going to be traditional skill work, whatever, stuff that's just too easy, stuff that's not live enough, whatever. Depending on countries, because Europe is a very, umbrella term. Depending on countries, I have seen a much more, I guess, modern approach or live approach to training where it's like, why would we go and do this without defense when we can do it with defense? It's never made sense to me and I think to a lot of people that I've experienced coaching over there. It makes sense to like go do this with defense. And then I think they deliver feedback well during those live drills where it's not like, again, the misconception is, oh, you guys just go out and play and hopefully they get better. And it's like, no, it's not that. We design the drill or the live environment in a certain way, and then we coach through that and, pull them over the side and give them a little tip. And I see that a lot more over there. And again, I think as much as I'm into individual skill and building, super, super talented players with the ball and with their movement and being able to be defenders and create advantages, that kind of comes second over there. And I'll say this, that lifts the floor. Although it kind of lowers the ceiling, it lifts the floor a little bit. So your average player is going to at least be able to get onto the floor because they understand how to play basketball within a team environment. Then the tough part is also finding the time and facilities because there's not enough gym access in a lot of places over there where they can also work on their individual skill to lift that ceiling. So whereas American players are like this, like really high ceiling, but also really low floor because their IQ just sucks a lot of the time. In general, European players are a little bit lower ceiling, but also higher floor. And I think with more social media coming into it and everything, and players can go and see you guys' drills and, see what we post online and go out into the park and do that by themselves. And then when they go with a coach, start to have that floor lifted, that's when you're going to start to see some of these super, super talented European players who also know how to play basketball the right way.
Yeah, I look at any skill training done by yourself as strength training, or the same way we look at strength training. We're in the weight room to get stronger, add more capacity to what we're able to do, get stronger, jump higher, be faster, right? That's how I look at one-on-one skill training. I'm trying to just raise that ceiling, right? Get them to experience things they've never experienced, get them in a direction of challenge, and continue just to raise that challenge. I was watching the Netflix show with LeBron and Ant, and LeBron is talking about like his view. He's got his family down here and they hold down the fort, and LeBron is just reaching farther and farther and farther. And he's talking about, I get up here and I'm looking back and my family's like, just push further. And the more I study these elite athletes, the thing they have in common is that obsession just to push further. Yeah. So training by yourself alone, nothing wrong with that, but look at it more like strength training, right? Let's go experience things that I've never experienced. Let's push into that discomfort. Let's push into that unknown, and let's try to add, more options to what we have, right? I can't do a 360 layup. Go work on a 360 layup till you can. That does not mean in a game you're going to be on a fast break and go do a 360 layup. No, but it's going to help you be more athletic. It's going to challenge your ability to focus in the air. We talked about general movement, bring it back to movement over moves. You're going to become a better mover, and that's going to apply to your entire game, not just a 360 layup. But so many of the people in the basketball world have this basketball lens, and if it's not something that they see all the time in a game, it's like, why are you training it? Well, I want my players to be able to do things they can't currently do in the game. How am I going to do that by doing Mikins all day? It just doesn't make sense. Right? We need to keep. Now, if you're a 7-year-old that can't make a layup, go do some Mikins. Perfect, because there's a challenge there higher than your current skill level. But once that becomes mundane and you can do 40 in a row like this, let's start looking for new challenges.
But there's some high school players that can't even finish with their offhand, so the Mikin probably could help.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If it's difficult, that's the biggest thing that I've started to learn is in these conversations with people who may have different views or disagree or whatever, is like, look, training is about difficulty and having difficulty in the right, building the right qualities. Simple as that. If a mic is difficult for an NBA player, sure, it's a good drill for an NBA player because it's difficult, it's providing sufficient challenge, which a lot of us, I think we underestimate how much challenge we actually need, but that's a different dimension. If it provides enough challenge where you're missing 40% of your mic and drills, and that challenge is building the skill of being able to lay the ball up and make the basket, it's probably a good drill, right? But I think where people go wrong is like they get attached to certain drills or concepts, and they want to feel good, right? Like they want to leave the gym, leave the drill feeling like, they're good at something versus leaving the gym feeling like they're shitty at something. And something I've been studying
those
recently.
are sometimes with the players that don't play basketball enough too, right? Because you usually feel good
Sure.
after a skill development workout, but when you're playing,
Yep.
somebody could bust your ass or go
Yes.
at you, and they don't want to play their sport enough. I think that's one of the issues with some players. They're too reliant on skill development, even though I love skill development and you need it, and it's the meat and potatoes of getting better.
Right. No, 100%. 100%. I think, honestly, I always say that playing should be your core development tool. Skills, anything outside of that is supplementary based on what you see in your playing. So if I go and I'm playing pickup with some of my buddies, and I notice that I suck at something, well, then I can go work on that by myself and find different ways. Maybe get a friend in the gym. We try it out in a live environment, or I go and try to build my capacity to do that. But all of that should be educated by my playing and then bridged back into the real game with as quickly as I can versus just like, oh yeah, I missed a couple left-hand layups. I'm going to go work on my left-hand layups. And then maybe because I do a few mic and drills, it's going to get better. Like, no, we need to start building that back in the game as quickly as possible. So I see on air as a supplement and a very valuable, necessary supplement that, we'll do a good amount with players, but seeing the game or play as the primary development tool has kind of changed my perspective.
To play devil's advocate on my own point, don't you think it's also important with 1-on-0 training? Because with no defense, we all say we love defense, but with no defense, we get more reps, we get more volume.
So I think that's an interesting topic. I think at first, early in like a learning process, volume can be a little bit more of a priority. Later in the learning process, it's less about volume and more about spacing in between reps. It's more about contextual interference, so a little bit of variability. So maybe actually doing 10 reps of something with space in between to think and feel and adjust and have to recalibrate your mind versus 50 reps of like chipping away at the same thing over and over again will actually be higher quality. And again, maybe at first, as a beginner at X skill, volume is the good thing or the priority, but as you go, it may be something where you start to prioritize quality of the reps over quantity.
Bobby, with a new skill, do you feel like repping it out is a good way to go?
What's the skill? I don't know what that means.
Great question.
What's the skill? Let's say just going to your right, step back. Now let's say you have a player that just likes to go their left and step back. We want to work on it going to the right. You feel like you rep it out, you add defense. How do you go about it?
I don't even look at it that way, so it's tough for me to answer that. Like, that's just not how I think.
Tell me more.
Like, I'm not looking like this player struggles to go right, so go rep it out. I don't know how I look at that, but I'm not thinking.
I think what the dilemma would be is that actually diagnosing if someone struggles to go right and making that conclusion. Like, how would you even come to that conclusion? What does that mean to struggle to go right? What is wrong going right? And like, how can, like, is it one? So the reason why I'm saying this is I just recently saw a post about Jared McCain.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
It means that if that's the best option for that specific situation and you just don't have that in your toolbox, that's how I would look at it.
But again, like, what does it mean for it to be the best option? And
the way he's guarding you, giving what the defense take. Like, if that happened on your left side, it would be easy for you, right? But you're getting the same option on your right. You just don't have that bag. You don't have that in your bag, and you can't get to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if I think for me, if I were to actually say to a player, like, what would be the need for me personally to actually go up to a player and say, you have this problem? Like, it would take a lot for me to say, you actually have this problem. Video, Jared McCain running into LaMelo, everybody calls a foul. Everybody's like, oh, foul. And then people are saying, saw somebody say he ran into his leg. He needs to work on being able to get around his leg. He tried going right. He bumped right into LaMelo's knee, and he said he doesn't have the ability to step by his leg, so he just ran right into his leg. And I think that's not a true diagnosis. I think you're looking at one situation without understanding the intention of the player. And I think he has that ability to go right and go around him. And what's the answer? What's the answer? Is the answer telling him, or is the answer continuing through the dilemma and making sure that he stays on track with what the goal is? Like, what's the goal? Back to what your point was, Coleman. I think a lot of training, I think you have this big side over here, which is give them the answer, give them the answer, give them the answer. And then you have this big side here, which is don't tell them anything and just go let them play. A lot of people think that we're completely on this side. I used to be in the middle, but now I'm way close. I'm actually way closer to that side because I think the involvement and the actual, what is my benefit to a player as a coach? Is it what I know? Is it, I think maybe a little bit, but I think the biggest benefit that I have is I do have context, but I have context over their goals, the goal they're trying to achieve, and the problems that are coming up. And the thing that I can do is, okay, I'm going to put you in a problem over and over again. And if I see any clue of you not being aware of what the goal is and you doing something that's going away from the goal, then I'm going to say, hey, yo, remember, the ball has to go in the basket. Remember, this line right here, this line's out of bounds. Oh, remember, there's a defender there, and they're just taking the ball from you. Stop doing that. Look at the space past them, because that's where you're trying to go. And little things like that, reminding them how, like, not about how to move, but this is how movement works. This is your goal with movement. Your body's actually trying to go somewhere in space, and just reminding that over and over again and giving them that's the feedback works extremely well.
So I had a second to kind of process your question combo.
There you go.
Your question is repping it out the first answer? Repping out a new skill.
Option. Yeah, an option, yeah.
I'm not going to tell them to do that. What I'm going to show them is that the only option they currently have won't work, right? If I can read that player can only go left and get into a step back, I'll guard them, and I won't let them drive left. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lock them down every single time. I'm not going to tell that player, I'm not going to have to tell that player to go rep it out. If he really wants to get better, he's going to see that he's limited in his abilities and can only go left. And when I guard him, I don't let him go left. Now, if he wants to go rep that out and work on it, I want him to find the solution to it. And the way that we train, we're constantly modifying the drills, throwing new things at these athletes, where it's gonna self-correct. Because we're just constantly changing the environment. We're constantly changing the looks that we're giving these players, the constraints that we're throwing at these players, the situations, and they're going to find out that certain situations they're not good at, and they need to spend more time focused on those situations. And I don't need to tell them, you can't go right. I'll just not let them go left. And then they get to go figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to tell them. A lot of times they have to see it themselves, and I do think that's a great way to go about it with what you're saying. I think the combination of that and repping out different options as an offensive player is really important.
I think repping out as many options as possible is very important. But to constrain them to say, go do 50 dribble right step backs, that's just not how I do it. Now,
50 is excessive.
Well, whatever. I'm just throwing random numbers out there. But, like, they're going to go do that with everybody else they train with also. That's what they do. The players that I train, they're high-level high school players. I'm not the only person that trained them, so why would I give them what they're getting everywhere else? That doesn't make sense.
So you think
to me. Never has.
So you do think both things are good? That you just want to give them something different on your end?
It's not the sake of being different. I think what I do is better.
No.
Don't get me wrong.
I didn't say it's the sake. I didn't say the sake. I'm saying that you want to give them a different approach because they're already repping it out in other places, which you believe is good as well.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, tell me what you're saying. It's not.
I don't
good.
think they need to be repping out footwork and dribble right step backs as much as they do. I think it's completely
I think
overdone.
the biggest reason why there's a belief towards the need to rep out. I understand the repping out. You see guys rep out. The volume. And I think the biggest reason why there is such a thing of like, I'm going to do this thing over and over and over again because of the immediate feedback that you get within that training session. And then you could, again, back to the imagination, you can imagine yourself after time and time again, I will be able to do this against defense. I will be able to do this in a live situation. But then you go to the live situation and it's so different because you didn't have 49 reps before the 50th, and you didn't have defense and you didn't have fans.
That's why the combination of skill development and playing your sport is so important. But I also think some of what you guys do also is replicated in the flow of the game. Not saying what you're doing is wrong. I'm just saying that some of it is replicated in the game while you're not repping things out during the game, if that makes sense.
I'm not saying skill development's not important. Repping out and skill development, repping out this thing, which could be skill, which could be not skill, and for the sake of repping out, I don't think is as important. I think, of course, there's volume that has to happen, or else you don't get nothing done. You have to get some type of volume in. Yeah. If you do no volume at all, there's no intensity.
From the test of time, like we talk about 10,000 hours, all that stuff. You need to rep out things.
Well, but then it's like repping out. When I hear repping out, what I hear is I want to go do this thing over and over again till I'm really good at it. And then what happens in the game is different. And then the solution again is do the same thing over and over again so I feel good about it in my training. But I don't think training is that linear. And I think there's an illusion that training is very linear and that you get better in the training session and then you take off from where you left off in last training session and then you keep going from there. But that's not how it works. It's you train, there's feedback happening when you drive home, when you go to sleep, when you wake back up, 100%. And then you go to the next time.
I agree with
and
that.
You go again.
I definitely agree with your last part. 100%. I just think the combination of repping out skills and playing your sport is a good combination. But go ahead, Coleman. I know you have some thoughts.
No, I mean, I'm processing all this because it's a fantastic conversation. I think number one, it depends on context, which I'll get into. But number two,
and I just want to reiterate, I think it's all good. I think the combination of all this stuff is good. Yeah.
Yes. And I think the biggest question here is, what does repping out mean? Does it mean we are trying to consolidate the same movement pattern to be the same every time? Or is that potentially repping out a step back in a variety of ways?
I like that
and
too.
As pretty much all of you guys alluded to, it's valuable to have volume of movement, but there's the whole quote, like, I fear not a man that, practices 1,000 kicks one time, but one kick 1,000 times. I'm actually the opposite of that, and to a certain extent, past the beginner level, where I'm actually scared of the motherfucker who can kick me in 1,000 ways. Because what if I take away that one kick, right?
I think of Kyrie Irving when you say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And really, Kyrie's like the one that we see really flourish and come to light. But like when you look at JJ Redick, because his name popped in here, you could say, oh, he shot the same way every time. He didn't. To the naked eye, maybe. But I mean, and we all feel it because we hoop. Like every shot, the momentum, stuff like that is going to be different. On a set three-pointer, okay, like the differences are there, but they're small. But as you become a more dynamic player, you're more fatigued on one shot. Maybe your ankle hurts. Maybe the ball is coming from, over here. Maybe you're not as ready for it. You're at a different joint angle. And incorporating these differences into your repping it out, I think is what makes that repping out more valuable, because now you're able to equip yourself with the capacity to do a bunch of different things. So maybe with a player who I know primarily trains with me and maybe doesn't have that much, gym access by themselves or whatever, maybe I will do primarily what Bobby alluded to, which is like, I'm going to guard them where they can't go left. And I'm going to say, you have to get into a jumper, figure it out. And as we go and they start to get frustrated or wherever their kind of line may be, and let's say they just look super uncoordinated with it, I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to give you 5 different options for this. I'll just show you. You try to imitate it, make it look as fluid as possible, make it work, put it in the basket, and then you're going to go right back to trying it on me. And then allow them to problem solve that. And then, after the session, be like, all right, you go figure it out, go work on it by yourself, rep it out, whatever.
And I think to Bobby's point, it's one-on-one is a great way to do that as well. But giving them, you can't use your right hand, right? 3 dribbles on this one, 5 dribbles from half court. You only shoot threes. Yes. You only shoot mid-range. I think,
If I was going to tell somebody that, all right, they have to go work out by themselves and you want to work on your step back, I tell them there's 3 things you can always manipulate, right? The distance you cover, the speed you're doing it, and the level you're playing at. So the height, the length, and the speed. And I would want them to experiment as many different combinations of that as they can. How many different ways can you do a step back, right? Don't count the reps. Don't count the sets. Don't count the time. Go in there and obsess over that step back and see how many different ways you can do it, right? And just keep trying to experience things. Can I do it this way? Can I do it this way? Can I do it this way? And if I can implant that mentality into an athlete, now they're out there searching, right? Pushing further, trying things that they can't currently do. And that's what I want to get in their head. So if I just say, all right, your homework is go home and you have 50 from this spot, 50 from this spot, and 50 from this spot, right? Then it becomes a homework assignment. Nobody wants to do homework. They want to play.
No, they do. Some people do.
Yeah, and they become freaking lawyers or
Terrible.
accountants.
This is a
I think one of the worst
They're
things.
really bad at basketball.
What you're saying is what I call becoming a skill development robot.
Yeah, I don't like this whole skill thing and separating skill development from it's all development. I look at it all as one thing. I'm developing basketball players, and it's all skill development, whether it's movement development, dribbling, shooting, getting stronger, jumping higher, the way you play a game. It's all skill, all of it.
That's why it's very tough for me to say, okay, you can't go right. And like, have I act like like it sounds like a good idea for me to say, okay, I saw that you couldn't go right, and I'm going to really focus on it. Now, that's not to say, oh, I see something that you can't do, and I'm going to push you further into challenge. I do that. That's all I do. That's what I do all the time. But to say like, okay, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to, next time you come in, we're really going to work on it. I'm going to tell you to work on it. It's like most people that come in, if you're in high school, you suck at everything. You just suck. And you need to get better all around. And to say like, oh, you don't have a right hand, and that's why you're not good. I can't say that for most people, and that's just like real. That's like real life. Like real life, you're coming in. Like it would take a lot for me to actually take note and say, go work on it.
So many parents, so many dads come into my gym. My son really needs to work at his jump shot. I watch him for 5 minutes. I'm like, your son sucks at everything. And they're just they're going to go get a private shooting coach, and they're going to spend hours doing the shooting and the mechanics. They can't jump 12 inches off the ground. They can't move their feet. They can't move. They can't dribble. They can't finish also.
Yes.
So now what do we do?
I think then that's why I think it's important to break down what athleticism is, because they might have the skill set, but they don't have the athleticism to allow the skill set to show.
But it's everything. Why do we have to just subject it to athleticism?
Well, I think because you'll have to diagnose what a player needs. Sometimes they just need to be better movers, more athletic. They might have the skill set. They might have the stuff I'm talking about with repping. They might have every finish, but all that won't show if they don't become better movers. And I think that's why it's important to categorize. There you go. Each different thing.
That's
for me.
the first time.
Does that make sense to you,
It
Coleman?
wasn't me stumbling on my words.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
I agree with that.
makes sense.
I agree with that. But I think you
I
work
like getting
on
combo all animated.
Yeah.
This is good.
You work on everything though. It's not like in real life. In real life, I'm not going to say, "Wow, you're such a bad mover," and you're a worse mover than you are a shooter. I would never do that.
So-
I would say you need to work on moving.
He needs to work on moving.
And shooting.
and
Everybody works on shooting, even if they shoot 50% from three. Like you're not going to not see Anthony
all right.
Edwards work on his shot.
I think I've brought this up to you before, right? If we bring in the wide receiver football player who's a great athlete, a great mover, when we bring him in to play basketball, we're probably going to want to focus on the skill development and focus him on actually playing basketball.
Everyone,
now,
should
if we
play
got
basketball.
a kid who happens to be a skill development robot, he has every skill. He could do everything when you see him wide open. Shoot threes, right? He could finish all kinds of finishes. What do we need to add to his game? Probably the athleticism aspect. We have to get him in the weight room. And I think it's important to diagnose what that player needs. And that's the reason why we need to break down why we can't call everything a skill.
I don't think so, because you're using this big word diagnose. I can tell in 5 minutes if this kid is athletic or not. I can tell in 5 minutes if this kid.
No, it has nothing to do with the word. I know we could see that a kid's not athletic in 1 minute.
And if you are athletic, I want to go see you dunk. I want to see you in the gym dunking, and I want to see you do a 360 dunk. And I want to see you do an East Bay dunk, even if you suck.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
it's like you're going to go work on that, and you're going to shoot, and it's a good thing to do if I'm trying to sell something of like, I'm going to break this down this many ways, and look, I thought about this extremely clearly, and I could say, this is what you need. And I think people do that. They want to say that word. They want to say, I can individualize this for you. When you suck at basketball, you need to work on everything. And I could point out the flaws that you have in everything. I could point it out, but it's not like Steph Curry isn't shooting. It's not like Steph Curry isn't working on his shot. You know what I mean? Like Steph Curry's a good shooter. He's probably not as fast as he is a good shooter. Probably not. Underrated speed.
What's
but
he
he's
say?
probably not.
What do you think, Coleman?
I like having you here. What do you think?
I appreciate that, man.
We're gonna have the same exact talk in 30 minutes when we go
We
have
probably
when I go
have-
have pancakes next door.
We've
with
probably
them.
had this talk a million
Hell yeah.
times or iterations of
Oh
it.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. And yeah, I mean, look, it is a conversation that can go a lot of ways, none of which are wrong or right. But I would tend to say, as you guys are alluding to, the lower level you are, the less specificity you need. And again, most people think they're better than they are. So if you are a average high school player, yeah, you got to work on everything. Like you getting to your point, a shooting coach is not going to fix everything for you. It may help you in one area, but then you're still going to have limiting factors elsewhere. Now, if I'm working with an NBA player who comes in, he's like, hey, like these are the shots that like I'm getting to a lot and I'm missing. All right, well, I'll probably design some drills to work a little bit more on that area or whatever. But that's the 0.01% of players. And I think for the vast majority of people who would listen to this or that we would talk to, they're going to need to be, I guess, more generalized as well. And one thing I actually want to hear you guys' opinion on that just came to my mind from like probably 5-10 minutes ago is I personally think setting a hard number of repetitions on drills is one of the worst things that players, coaches, trainers can do in the context of skill development. I'm interested to hear what you guys think and how we should like gauge how much of something we should do. I think it's more of a feel thing. I think it's more of like, all right, when something feels easy, stop. If something feels more difficult and you have that near miss effect where you're like, oh shit, I got to get this, keep going with it. But I see so many players, like I get this question on my Instagram and YouTube every drill I post, how many reps, how many sets. It's like, bro, do this shit till like it's easy and then just add something to it. So, I mean, that's one answer to it, but I'm interested in you guys' perspective on how to know, like, I guess, how much of something to do in the context of building a skill.
If I'm talking to a player, I like using perform till disinterested, right?
Sure.
And
Good.
something gets old, it gets stale. Now, are you just lazy and don't want to do anything? That's a different story.
Right.
Like
That's the difference.
You can't say that. But perform until disinterested is good. When I'm running a session, I think that's where the art of coaching comes in. And it's like sometimes I'll end it when it's on a high, right? Everybody's humming,
Yeah.
energy is great. Session's over, leave, and I want them coming back wanting more. Sometimes where you talked about having the players live in frustration. Sometimes I want it to be a frustrating hour, and I don't know why. It could be dependent on my mood that day. But I want this to be frustrating. I want them to endure the suck, and I want them to just live there. Ross loves when I say that. Anyway.
Hey, yo.
But it's I think that's the more reps we have as coaches and the more players we've seen, the more players that we see, the longer we do this, we get to be the own judge of that. And when we want to escalate the drill, when we want to take the drill back, when we want to ramp up the intensity, when we want to tone down the intensity. And it's really reading the room. Who's in there, right? Who's in my gym right now? Who's the most important person in my gym? And I have a most important person in each one of my classes. I pick favorites. Sure. Right? My favorites are the best players and the ones that I see the greatest potential in. And I say that out loud, right? If I have a kid that's, he's a high major and then there's, 3 whatever lower level players, I want that high major kid to freaking feel challenged. I want the most advanced player in my gym to be challenged. I'm not going to dumb my session down. I'm going to make all the dumb people get better.
Dumb people.
No, that's one of the things that people always ask me this question. Like coaches primarily, but it's like, well, how do you use this approach with players who aren't as good? And when you have like a wide variety of levels, like how do you still challenge the advanced players? And I'm like, it's not about how I challenge the advanced players. It's about how I make it even somewhat doable for the not so good players. And like I start, whether it's a camp who has, or which has pros all the way down to young kids, I'm starting with what challenges the highest level, like you're just saying. And then I can go and try to find some differences, whether it's like, hey, maybe on this one, don't try to take a simple drill, touch the backboard and then finish. Maybe you just go above your eyes. And that's the most that you can do right now. Let's get the ball above your eyes and finish. But I'm going to start with showing everyone the most advanced version of it, because then these younger or shittier players have something to look up to, or they're like, oh wow, I can get there. They have like that next level and then the next level that they can see, versus going around and being like, okay guys, we're gonna baby you guys and make sure that everyone's comfortable with the drill, and then I'll come around and help advance like the older, more advanced players. I'm always trying to find the greatest amount of challenge and then regress that with younger, not so good players, versus starting at the lower level and then either not challenging players or having to go around and challenge players individually.
Yeah. And I don't say that because it's not that I don't care about the less skilled players. I care about everybody, and I want everybody to be as good as possible, and that's my job. But I think that's what's best for them, right? I want them to see that best player be challenged and how that best player responds to challenge, how that best player responds to adversity and difficulty and enduring, right, that difficult session, and that it never ends. This player is better than everyone else in the session, and I'm still presenting challenges to that player, and watch how he attacks this drill. Sometimes we have a pro come in, and it's all high school players, and we got one pro come in, and I'm constantly having the high school players watch that pro, and not watch how skilled he is, watch how he attacks these challenges, because you talked about we might these pros would think it's silly the way we train in these games and these funny things that we come up with, but that is not the case. I get these pros in a little bit, they're laughing, they're having fun, yes, but it's not silly. They're freaking loving it, and they're going at it harder than anyone else in the freaking gym.
I agree. I've maybe had one or two experiences where I've had a professional player resist a method. Usually I would say in one of the two times I explained the reasoning behind it, and they're like, oh shit, all right, yeah, it makes sense. And the other time they're like 38 years old, they're a vet, and I'm like, I'm not even going to try to do some of this stuff with you because you've your methods, you're on the way out, whatever. Every other time, these guys, again, as I can't remember who mentioned at the beginning of the episode, but the better players are very challenge oriented. They're always looking to conquer challenges. And if you provide them with something that is a challenge, chances are they're going to attack that very hard. And being able to showcase that to younger players, I think, is something that I kind of underestimated. Growing up in a good basketball area, I would always see, I would have better players in the gym. And then moving down here to Miami, which honestly just sucks for youth basketball. And there's this weird culture of I don't know, pros are too cool to train with younger kids. And so you don't see that very much. A lot of the kids around here don't know what it's like to be, a professional and to attack challenges in a certain way and to work out with intent. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why an area like Miami isn't as good as an area as DC, New York, New Jersey, whatever, because I grew up even as a shitty 5'8" white kid who never had much of a future, practicing and training with pros because they're just yo, come in, train with us. And I think the more that we can recreate that and, design that environment for younger players, the better.
Something where the coaches need to eat their own dog food is the whole feedback portion of it. Because it's coaches ask, how do I get better? What do I do? What drill do I do next? What rep do I do next? It's you need to get feedback because there's no scoreboard in training. And that's what everyone forgets. Talking about goals and talking about what do you want to happen. There's no scoreboard. There's no everyone doesn't have a 2K ranking, and you don't train players and then they increase their rank. It doesn't happen. There's no scoreboard. The only scoreboard that actually happens is in games, and there's so many other factors between you and their game performance that nobody correlates it like that. People try to say, oh, I work out this guy. Oh, I work out NBA guys. That's why that's the biggest flex. I work with NBA players. Yes. Right? There's no biggest flex of I increase this guy's skill by 50%. You can't say that. So what do you do as a trainer? And what it naturally happens is that when I'm training, and if I'm training a lot consistently over time, what I'm getting feedback from is parents. That's huge. They're making decisions with their wallet. I'm getting feedback from players. I'm looking at their freaking face, seeing if they're focused. I'm talking to players after training. I don't care as much about what they say. I'm just getting, what is their energy? What is their energy towards that? Is everybody locked in? Do I have to say things twice? Are they running to, are they freaking locked in? Are they engaged? Right? Yeah. And it's very difficult to say anything else. And there's no other thing that I should be going for because I have 1 to 3 hours with a person every single week. And if they're serious about basketball, they should be training 8 to 12. So I'm not getting that much of their time. So what is my What is my thing? I'm trying to give them an experience that they've never had or something that they're trying to push for, and I'm looking for engagement. And that should be my goal. And anything else beyond that is something that I'm trying to do for an ego purpose. That's it. You know, it's very difficult. It's a difficult thing to be a part of because there isn't a scoreboard, and I don't like that. I don't like that there isn't a scoreboard, but the scoreboard is what is the player doing? What are they doing?
Yes.
And what also the parents. The parents are also a scoreboard because they have a feel, they have a gut, they love their child, and they want to see their child be in something that they're engaged with. And if a parent comes up to you after a session and they're like, "Yo, I've never seen anything like that before. This was freaking amazing." I'm not taking that with a grain of salt. Like, that's freaking awesome that you thought that this was great. Like, I love that. Like, I love that you thought that this was great. That there's something good about what I did. And that's what coaches should be doing. They should be ready for that feedback.
100% agree.
Let's start to wind down here, finish up a little bit. But I saw you just had a video on LaMelo Ball, and everybody needs to go subscribe to your YouTube channel. We definitely got to plug that at the end. I love it. What makes LaMelo Ball different? Because his name is obviously really trending this season, and we see him with the one-leg shots, which I love. I shoot more one-leg shots now than when I was really playing. But
Nice.
yeah, what do you see about his game that makes him different or from other players that you've studied, and what could be learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something I mentioned in the video, but a lot of it just goes back to his development history. And again, I know 1% max of how he developed, but like the kid was playing 17U in 7th grade or something. He grew up with older brothers who both of which are NBA level players. He played pro in Lithuania at 16, then went
That's
to the
right.
NBL, which is a great league, at 17, 18, where he's playing against grown-ass men, NBA level guards. And so every step of that journey, he was, I don't want to say underqualified, but he was playing against older competition up through his formative years and up to essentially entering the NBA. So I look at that and then I correlate that with how he plays, which is not traditional, it's not orthodox, it's not fundamentally clean in the eyes of most,
Right.
but he damn sure figures it out. And again, whether it's his jumper, whether it's certain angles that he takes, whether it's seeing the game, like he's consistently played with challenge against better players versus getting moved, like reclassing and like playing against shitty players to dominate and get a ranking. Like, no, and shout out to LeVar, as much as, we all had opinions on him earlier. Like, the dude just put him against better players his whole life, pick up games, everything. And there's even like Elijah Arenas. I saw a podcast yesterday where he was talking about like playing 8th grade. And in 8th grade, he was playing with like NBA guys, playing pickup games. And again, that helps players develop something that a theme that we've talked about this whole podcast, which is not necessarily a solution, but like a given solution, but the solution or the set of solutions or the willingness to create a solution for whatever gets thrown at them. Which I think is like the one leg shots probably just came naturally to do because it's like, yeah, I mean, it just feels, fluid if I'm going to my left. So
it does feel like a fluid shot when you shoot it.
It does. I love one leg shots from anywhere. And I think I've been a big proponent of them since I started pulling them, like, in pickup games.
Do you think it could become the evolution, kind of like how Harden started the step back?
I think it depends on whether NBA, because everything starts in the NBA, right? And I think it depends how willing NBA coaches and organizations are to be open-minded and realize, like most hoopers would, that it's not that crazy of a shot. And if they're open to that and players are making them, then yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because every kid out there right now is trying to break down LaMelo's footwork and copy his moves. What they should be copying is how he was raised, right?
Yes.
With the two older brothers, with the father, playing varsity in the 7th grade, playing pro at 16 years old. If you want to copy something, copy that, right? Go find incredible challenges. Go find a very difficult, chaotic environment to grow up in against people that are better than you, because that will do more for your game than now watching what he does at 20 whatever years old and breaking down his footwork. Look at how he was raised. Look at how he actually developed. Don't do his drills, right? So I say good drills isn't about the drills. It's not. It's a joke. It's not about the drills. Drills aren't that important. Look at everything else. Look at how he was raised, and you will find that common among all the great NBA players. Look at how they were brought up. Look at their circumstances. Look at the challenges they faced. Look at everything that they had to overcome and adapt to. That's what you want to mirror, not the freaking moves, not the footwork, because that's not it. That is not the separator. It's just not.
Maybe it could be that, or maybe it could be something else. But where do you see skill development going?
What else could it be?
Can't be anything else because Bobby said it. But
Tell me.
no, where do you see the evolution of skill development going? Like we look up 10 years from now, how will we be training players? Because I think if we look 10 years back, it looks crazy now, right? So
Yeah.
10 years from today, this might look crazy what we're doing today. So where do you see it all going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main trend that I've seen, to keep it simple, is more defense and training. And I've talked to a lot of people at the highest level, whether they're like Boston Celtics, for example, do a ton of live training. Like they put their players in the situations that they see and that they want to see if they take the steps into that next role, and then they rep it out in those situations and, work through those situations. I know the Nuggets have a very live play heavy player development philosophy. And there's some other organizations as well. And then even internationally, like a lot of these programs that I've been to practices and stuff like this, again, it's like, it's nothing crazy, but they're just putting them in the situations and working through there and adding difficulty there. So I think most things that happen in the NBA will trickle down to youth levels or whatever. And I think with that, as more organizations start to take on like more live training, more players will start to do that in the off season. You'll start to see more videos of it, whatever. Then it's going to become more accepted, which I don't know why it's necessarily not accepted, but I think that will become a little bit more of the norm, is like mixing skill work and play as just one big development thing. And I think that's already happening, but in 10 years, I think that'll be the norm.
Especially at the college level, do you think that team sessions should look more like skill sessions?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think, number one, I think at the college level, and again, college includes theoretically thousands of teams, but I think there's way too much on-air stuff. And that's why, I've been to a good amount of college practices this year, and they're pissed that their players don't know how to run their sets, and they're running them against air where maybe you have to adjust the angle of a screen rather than just going to a spot and setting it. And then the coaches get mad at the players for this. And it's like, yeah, should they be able to figure it out? I get sure, but they're also 18 years old. And anyways, I do think that should be the case. And I think, I guess another trend that kind of builds off of that is player development will become more of a priority and more of something that's built into team practice. Because again, going back to the Celtics, their big philosophies around that are, if we have better players who have higher IQ, and we have a good system, which we're going to have, we're going to win because we have better players and a good system. Versus most teams, once the season starts, it's like, oh, you get your shots up after practice, but they're not actively trying to develop. Whereas if you get better players, especially better players in the context or framework of your system, you're probably going to be a pretty good team.
Yeah, and over the course of the season, just doing a little bit of skill development every day within your team construct adds up. And to your point, better players, better teams.
Yes, 100%. So, yeah, that's where I see it all going for sure.
Coleman, great stuff. What do you have coming up? Talk to us. Where can we find your work?
Yeah, man. By Any Means Basketball on Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then, yeah,
need
man.
help on YouTube.
Hey, hit me up, man. I'm
Gabe.
It's not easy though.
Gabe, he said it's easy.
Yeah,
Should be able to do it
figured out.
easily.
Yeah.
He said
Gabe,
it's so
super easy process, brother.
Yeah.
Nothing to worry about, man. But no, I appreciate you guys, man. It's been fun to be on here, chop it up.
Coleman, great stuff. You're always welcome back on the show. Shouts to Ross. Shouts to
for
Bobby.
real. Shout out to Ross.
And we're here. Another episode of the Good Drill Pod. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.